Hey guys, before we get started, you know the drill. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at LaunchpadPod, and our website, launchpadpod.com. I want to give a big shout out to everybody who watched our YouTube video, the premiere of Launchpad Pod YouTube. We got a lot more people watching than I thought we would have. I was like, who wants to see our dumb faces? Turns out a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of dumb people on board for that. No, thank you guys. That was really cool, and we got some really good comments. We really appreciate it. Hope you guys are watching this one now. It's going to be a little different today, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, today, Rumi, guess what we're talking about? Can you tell?
I know. Where are you? So if you guys aren't watching the YouTube right now, I'm here. Rumi, I hear Rumi. His chair is moving, but I see nothing.
I found invisible. I found invisibility potion. Can you believe it?
Just so I know, where did you find that? Because if you didn't manufacture it, where did you acquire that by chance?
I mean, I was going by this abandoned research facility here in Georgia, and
Sure.
it was, I just was like, I wonder what's in there. Shits and giggles, do it for the gram, YOLO. And I went inside, and turns out it was invisible man layer, an invisible man layer, and I got the potion and I tried it out and I've been invisible for a couple days now.
Now, just because I don't know how many of our listeners have seen Invisible Man movies, but most of these invisible men are evil. So number one, the fact that you're invisible, you're going to lose your mind for sure. But do you think the layer that you stumbled upon, do you think that was from a long time ago? Or you think an invisible man was out creating invisible man trouble and then he came home and was like, who stole my, it was the three Goldilocks and the three invisible bears where they're like, who drank all my potion?
This one's just right. I'm not sure. There was nobody there, so they either all drank the potion.
Obviously, it was an invisible man layer.
It was pretty recent.
Perfect setup, man.
It was good. That was good. I think it must have been pretty recent. I am feeling pretty itchy, but I haven't gone so far as to start becoming a complete asshole. Although my wife might say different. I don't know.
Now here's something we're going to talk today about: invisible men and invisible man movies.
Yeah.
Here's something that I watched 3 of these things, or maybe to be honest, 2.5 in the last couple days.
Yeah.
That's never addressed. If you couldn't see your body, I think it would really change your locomotion and how you moved around space. Do you agree?
Anytime I've had to be you've been in monster suits, right, Matt?
Exactly. Yes.
Not being able to see your feet because you're in a costume or in some sort of getup. I've been in Halloween costumes where my visibility has been hampered and I can't see my feet or my hands, and it turned into just a bumbling mess.
Yeah, everybody right now, imagine if you were invisible, if you could see through your own body. How would you go upstairs? You wouldn't really be sure. I mean, you'd get the hang of it, I guess, but the first little bit, I don't think so. How would you grab a doorknob? I think that would be hard.
I'll tell you what knob to grab, Rumi.
How would you grab that knob?
We don't need to get
Bacon. Kevin Bacon says he was in one that we'll talk about a little bit. He said that it's hard to sleep when you can see through your eyelids, which I get, but just fucking wrap a bandana around, bro. You don't need to be a genealogist to figure that out.
Yeah.
But that's something you wouldn't think of, right? You couldn't blink your eyes if you were invisible,
Weird. There's so much we got to get into, but let's get into it, man. I am itching out of my mind. Being invisible seriously is starting
it's itchy?
to... Yeah, starting to get me fucked up. Man, I'm getting pissed off. Rage. Invisible Man rage. Cue the theme song.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
All right, welcome to the Launchpad Podcast. I'm Aaron.
I'm Matt.
Matt, my computer just crashed.
Oh, yeah.
This is, I'm visible again. It was too itchy. I couldn't handle it.
Now, did the serum wear off, or did you take an antidote?
They had the antidote in there too. I grabbed both.
Was the shit labeled?
It's
like
pretty,
you knew which one to take first.
It's obviously color coded. See, in the early Invisible Man movies, it's all black and white, so you can't see.
He didn't know what the fuck. That's why he had such a trouble.
Yeah, that's why they're having such a bad time. So in the later when we get to like 2000s Hollow Man, it's like blue serum invisible, orange serum visible, and I get it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you: is what color is invisible and what color is the serum to make you visible?
Although
so blue is right.
But at the same time, it's like, shouldn't the invisible serum be invisible, like clear?
Thematically, yes. But as far as helping, I think invisible should be red and visible should be green. Isn't that much better?
Why is red? Why red?
Red means stop. Red is bad. Red is like red, and I think green negates the red. So red is stop, green is go. So okay, stop and go. Like to me, that makes like that's a visual cue of what would do what.
See, I would be like green means go invisible, and red means stop being invisible.
I can't wait till we find like chemicals together and the resultant conversations of that. Because we both walk in there, we see chemicals on the counter, we look at each other. We know we're drinking them. It's just a matter of what order.
The thing that I always hate about mnemonic devices, it's like beer before liquor, never been sicker. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear. I'm like, but I could also rhyme that with other things like liquor before beer, never been sicker. Like I still think I could come up with a rhyme to remind myself.
Get better quicker.
Get better quicker. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there's always some like strange pneumatic device that you'd come up with that you're like, wait, does that pneumatic device work, or am I just rhyming the wrong things now? Because I'm
like
clever
I
with my
before
rhymes.
E, but you could say after I after E, except after C.
Except when my neighbors suck, and then I'll never forget how to spell it. So,
well, we're not talking about letters or mnemonic devices today.
No, we're talking about invisible men and women in one movie.
Says you. I didn't see her.
Man, so you finally saw 2020's Invisible Man.
Yeah, the other night I sat down, it was on HBO Max, and I was like, okay, tonight's a good night for it. And it was one of those movies, I started doing it while I was kind of like, I'm on a car hunt right now, I'm searching for a new car. So I was like, had that on my laptop, and I was pulling that up. And within the first scene, I was like, nope, close laptop, look for a car tomorrow, because I want to pay attention to this movie. If you guys haven't seen it yet, it is 2020. It's called The Invisible Man. It's a new riff. I gotta give it a lot of credit. There's a lot I didn't like, but there's a lot I did like. It's written.
Yeah. I was very impressed with this movie because this is kind of the reboot of Universal Monsters doing their thing after the failure that was The Mummy.
Yeah, they're like, don't count that one.
Yeah. I
didn't see that, but I can only imagine how it was. This one is written and directed by Leo Whannell, Whannell. I didn't look and see what else she's done, but I gotta say this right from the get go.
He's done. It's Lee Whannell.
I just looked that up. So I was like, wait a minute. Oh, he did the first Saw, which I hated. He did Cooties, which I loved.
You know who it is,
Upgrade,
right?
Which I love.
He's the guy in Saw who is trapped there with him.
Yes, I see that now.
He's the first guy from Saw. Man, how far he's come.
Well, let's see. He's done a bunch. He's directing Escape from New York. He's directing The Wolfman. He did The Invisible Man, and he did Insidious. He directed Upgrade, which I loved, and he did Insidious Chapter 3. Did you see Upgrade? I
loved Upgrade.
That was really cool. And he's been an actor in a bunch of stuff. So he wears many hats, and he's not a woman.
He wrote Cooties, which you love.
Which I love also. He knows how to make a suspenseful movie, because I feel like this movie has a bunch of plot holes. It's got a bunch of things you've seen before, but it is a scary movie in terms of like, you're in the same boat as her where you know shit's going down. You're obviously looking for things to be moving in the background, the foreground, whatever. But like, the movie opens with her in bed with her husband, you assume her husband or boyfriend, and she gets up and she starts sneaking around, And then it becomes apparent that she's poisoned him and he's knocked him out. And it becomes very apparent very quick. She's trying to get the fuck out of there quietly. And she's sneaking around and, she's trying to be quiet. She sneaks downstairs and she kicks a metal dog bowl. And I swear, when she did that, she stops and freezes. And me on the couch watching the movie, I stopped and froze. Because we've all been in that situation where for whatever reason you're trying to be quiet and you make that one fucking loud noise and you freeze to see if anybody
Trust me, I have a new baby and...
That's your life, bro.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you're like... And obviously you didn't mean to do it. It's like a huge thing where it's like, you're like, fuck. The second you do it, you know that you've done it. And you're just like, damn it. Try not to.
The movie does a great job conveying that and putting you in that moment. And it does it numerous times.
Realizing that he's probably a piece of shit and she's trying to escape because he's an abusive piece of shit, which we show. She gets out of the house. She jumps in her friend's car who's like, what's going on? And out of nowhere, this guy runs up to the window. He's like, fuck you. I'm going to get you. I'm going to kill you. And he's like freaking out, banging on the window, smashing the glass and stuff. And you're like,
punches through the car window and
he's
she drives
piece
away.
Of shit.
But you could tell like that sequence, I didn't time it. It's got to be 7 to 10, maybe 7 to 10 minutes long of her trying to get out of this house. And the house is kind of like a complex. He's got all these different, security devices and shit that she's slowly disarming. But you can see she pulls a bag that she's packed out of like a grate. So you could tell that this wasn't a spur of the moment thing. She planned this and this took some time to set up. And that earlier that day, she was planting things around the house to pick up and leave with. Yeah. So that this has got to be like a decent situation. And it's quiet. There's no introduction to the characters before this. And it's not heavy-handed. It's not like, you don't see blood on the floor or anything like that. She doesn't have a black eye. Like, we get it. Something's up here. Yeah. And it's great. I thought that's a really good opening because you're immediately in. That's, we should do that episode that we've talked about of like the first scene is awesome. Like getting into a movie, the first scene. Yeah. This definitely qualifies as that. I'm like, okay, it's the balloon bopping the balloon up thing that you always say.
And one of the things she does is she goes through this kind of laboratory and you see like suits in the background. So, he's like a genius, his house is like, he's rich as hell from being this scientific genius. She's scared and it's really important for her to leave. And that's all you need for an introduction. So many movies would have drawn it out. So many movies would have been like, look what an abusive piece of shit he is.
She's on the phone with her sister and she's like, hey, sister, I need your help tonight because Brian's abusive. What else did you do? No, I don't.
And I'm so glad they didn't put us through that because them showing it would have put a sour taste in the movie. Like when movies show abuse, you need to show it either to tell the point of the movie or to prove to the audience that he's a piece of shit. This movie didn't need to show it because us reacting to her fear was enough for me to understand it because that's not what the movie's about. The movie is about the gaslighting. And I thought that this was such a brilliant take on this movie because, The Invisible Man, you and I are huge fans of the original Universal Monsters of Invisible Man. And it's hard to say, okay, how do we make an Invisible Man a modern movie?
Sure.
Right off the bat, does he drink a potion? When I heard they were remaking this movie, I was like, is he going to be a potion drinking madman? Like, what is it?
Says the guy who exactly 14 minutes and 45 seconds ago did a bit about drinking a potion.
I mean, that's the way you do it when you're in Mad Science Land. But I thought that this was pretty brilliant in a way that was like, how are we going to update this? And spoiler alert, it's not a potion, guys. It's a suit. And as much as I think that's a harder sell than a potion. How does the potion work? Well, I just did.
Right. Right.
The suit is more believable, and I think for this movie worked better than Magic Potion would have because this was very grounded in reality. And one of the things that I think is so brilliant about a movie like this, and we talked about it in the Scenes episode, we've talked about it in earlier episodes, is a good horror movie takes real life fear and manifests it in a horror that is a monster. And even though this monster was a very real man, a guy in an invisibility suit hunting you down while nobody believes you, just like in Chucky, just like in any movies where they don't believe that the horror's happening and everybody who the horror's happening to is just getting shit on by everybody else. That is a great horror setup. And this movie pulled it off, I think, really well.
There's two things I want to say based on what you just said. The first thing is the believability of the believability of the invisibility. The movie does not explain to you what the suit is about. You like Rumi said, when she's fleeing at the beginning, you see her walk through a laboratory Did you hear that?
Yeah, you're fine. Keep going.
The believability.
What did you hear?
My mom trying to FaceTime me. And it came up on my computer for some reason instead of my phone. When she's fleeing, you see a long shot of this laboratory. There's a bunch of computers, and there is what looks like mannequins at the end of the room. But it is not even like a Chekhov's establishing shot where they're trying to show you that. It's just in the background. You might even miss it. And later on, the first time I think it's verbally brought up is the scumbag's brother is his lawyer, and he says, a guy with he was an asshole, and of course, if he made an invisibility suit, what's the creepier than making an invisibility suit that doesn't work and having people believe it worked? That's the first time anybody mentions invisibility suit, and later on, she says that he has one. They don't explain how it works. They don't explain how long he took to make it. They don't explain what. It just exists. And I think it's one of those things like when you talk to a kid and you just tell them that something is the way it is and try to move on quick before they ask questions, they usually believe you. And we're the kids in that situation because the movie's like, invisibility suit, he made it, go. And you're like, okay, I don't need to know any more than that.
To that end, I think in Hollow Man, 2000's Hollow Man, this is what one of the big failures of that movie is. It really gets into how they made the invisibility serum, and they spend a lot of time showing it off. But we'll get to Hollow Man in a little bit. I think, so overall, did you give this movie a big thumbs up? Did you like it?
Yeah, because the other thing I wanted to say based on what you said was, sophistication of certain stories has changed throughout time, right? Like look at comic books. Comic books were so simplistic, in the 40s and 50s. Now there's a lot more to them. You take the original Invisible Man, which I feel was pretty fucking hard hitting for when it was made, and it's not gory, it's not graphic, but it's fucking brutal.
He kills over 100 people in that movie.
Yes, and for no reason other than he's crazy maniacal, which is scary, right? We as a society have a hard time grasping that. Now you make this movie now. 60, 70 years later? Actually, more than that, right? Almost 80 years later.
The first Invisible Man is 1933, dog.
Yeah, so think about how much has happened since then. Let's just say in America, but like technology and everything and storytelling has evolved. So now if you just made a pound for pound update of that movie, even if you did it well, it would be fine. But like you said, Rumi, we're taking something that we all know of to a certain extent, that we all fear to a certain extent, right? A domestic, terrible relationship. And you're making that the perspective. You're making that the lens that we're doing this through. So like, who would be the most scared of somebody who's invisible? This woman who's been brutalized in many different forms by someone who's supposed to take care of her. Yeah. And I think that is terrifying when you really think about it. It amps up like you or I making an enemy, having that enemy be able to get in our house undetected, hurt the ones we love undetected is terrifying. But when it's someone who you feel like you can't escape from, who you felt like this for a long time from, who you thought you were rid of, it adds an extra layer of not only reality and sophistication, but terror to this already scary concept.
To the point that my wife will not watch this movie. Because she says...
I get that.
She's like, it's too real. She's like, and I was like, it's really well done. She's like, I don't care. It's too real. Because she's like, I've been gaslit by people who are trying to hurt me emotionally. And that's awful. And it's like, and for me watching this movie, I think that something that's so brilliant about this movie coming out now in 2020 is we've just gone through this whole Me Too movement and a lot of women coming forward with stories of like, nobody believed me when this was happening to so many women and repeatedly happening and nobody believed me. And I'm almost more angry at it, obviously emotional abuse, physical abuse is horrible. And I'm angry at that, but I'm so mad when it's like a pattern and it was in broad daylight and nobody believed the victims. I get mad at that because it's like, the fact that people can let this happen. And when you hear about like, I don't know, it happens a lot on like, you hear about this rapist and the woman's it has proof. Other women are like, yeah, he tried to do that to me too, or did do that to me. And nobody believes him. And then they get off because they're like, well, he seems like he's sorry. And you're like, I wish Batman was around to go beat that guy's ass.
Yeah, right.
And it's like you're watching this movie and you're like, I need a Batman. I need somebody to believe this woman. And like it just makes you so anxious to just want justice for her or something to happen or her friends to believe her. And even the friends who believe her are like, I don't know, I'm getting kind of tired of your crazy bullshit. And it's like, oh God, he's right there
Yeah.
in the room with you.
And it's like what you said. We mentioned this on the scenes episode that we did. We were talking about the best scenes. Some monster movies, the monster is literally a metaphor. Well, I guess not literally, but I guess it is literally a metaphor. It's figuratively a representation of something real that is to be afraid of. A man who is invisible and is menacing you is a very big metaphor for someone who is menacing you that nobody else is aware of, even though you're saying, he's right there. He's doing this.
It's the Chucky. You're a little kid. You have a doll who's killing people, and you're like, Chucky did. And everybody's like, you're a piece of shit.
But even
kid.
that's like still one step removed because you have the fantasy element of a doll moving, right?
Yeah.
But now you're like, this guy who's my husband or boyfriend or fiance or whoever is doing these things. And to me, it's funny because what you just said, Kate said, your wife said that it was too real, and you said, yeah, but it's well done. That's exactly how I feel about the movie. It was really well done. However, it's a different movie than the original because the original was fun, because it was like, because he was crazy maniacal, it was less detached, so I can enjoy it more. Yep. This one was real. Like, I felt I was emotionally involved with this woman. I wanted her to be safe. I was worried about her well-being, but it was not in a fun way. I was talking to someone earlier yesterday comparing it to Scream. Like in Scream, we all know and like the characters, and you don't like, you care about them. You don't want them to get killed, which means when they're about to get killed, you're suspenseful and, you know, there's tension, but it's fun. This movie was definitely not fun. You know what I mean? Do you agree with that?
I do. And let me bring this up. So the other day, somebody was talking to me on Instagram, and we were kind of arguing. This was called The Death List. It's a podcast, The Death List Tease on Instagram. And they were like, hey, just in case nobody knows, Scream isn't a horror movie. And we kind of got into it, you know, not in a competitive way, but I was just like, okay, I'll listen to you.
In me and Matt's Blockbuster store, it is in the horror section.
It is in the horror section. And he was like, it's more of a thriller because he's like, one, it's not scary. I'm like, well, that's subjective. Because I was
Ruby's got his hands up in the air, like, well,
you know, and I was like, by that argument, neither is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you're saying that, like, it has to be like, you know, and I've often argued that Silence of the Lambs is more of a thriller because of its realism. People could argue, well, by your logic, Texas Chainsaw Massacre isn't a horror movie; it's a thriller. I'm like, yeah, but it's over the top enough. And Scream is over the top enough that it falls into goof. You know, it falls into sort of a horror.
Interesting.
Thing.
Okay.
The Invisible Man might not be horror because I mean, you could argue science fiction because of the invisible, like the science aspect of it. He's still a mad scientist. He has a unbelievable scientific achievement, but they did it in such a real way that it is very much like in that vein of, is it horror? Is it not? It is horrifying, sure. But, and since you brought up Scream, it is in that sort of vein. But at the end of the day, I'll watch Scream because it's fun and it has like a nostalgia factor to the 90s and it's a good horror movie. Universal Monsters are horror movies, but they were like, people want to watch them. I want to go to like a midnight movie and see a Frankenstein or watch The Invisible Man. I don't know if this was on the docket for like a fun, like midnight movie marathon that I'd be super stoked for it because it is heavy as fuck.
Yeah. Like, well, Scream is like, I could see you and I sitting on a couch and being like, what do you want to do tonight? We have nothing planned. You want to just throw Scream in? Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, I don't think we'd throw Invisible Man 2020 in. You and I might like to dissect it or something, like to study it almost, but you're not, it's not an enjoyable film experience. And again, it's not like creepy, like it's not like Kids or Gummo, to quote two movies by the same director, but like those movies are fucking hard watches. This is not necessarily a hard watch, but it is so suspenseful that like your skin kind of crawls, like because of the subject matter. And it is well done. Like there are some really good tense scenes here. There are some scenes that are just like, it's a device. Like you wanted to use his invisibility. You wanted to use her awareness of it. You wanted to use other people's awareness of it, but it works. Like I think there are some really creepy scenes there where, is he there? Is he not there? Oh, he is there, but where is he? Does she know he's there? Oh, she does. Is she going to be able to convince that person in time? Oh, he's in on it. You know, it's like, it gets to be pretty cool.
And I think they did a great job with it overall. And the invisibility like effects, they actually, some of the movies on this list, I don't think they went as far as they have in other movies as far as the invisibility gag goes. Like when you look at Hollow Man, the shit they're pulling off in that movie, holy fuck,
it's
dude.
ridiculous.
The shit they're pulling off as far as like invisibility gags, though, in the early Universal monster movies, that made a statement. This movie is like, it's been done. A couple smash plates and flinging her around the room a little bit, stabbing the guy in the neck. It was done well, but they weren't going for like, hey, something you've never seen before. They weren't trying to move the bar as far as like invisibility VFX goes or special effects goes, which they didn't have to. I thought it was cool when she damages his suit and you just see like the eye floating around in the air. I thought that was really well done. The paint, she splashes him with paint and you see him walking around. They did some really clever things and did some really good VFX, but at the end of the day, like, I'm glad they didn't try to push the bar in something they couldn't pull off, because this was only a $7 million budget and they made like $142 million. So good on them for killing it.
Well, you said something, you saw this before I did. You saw this a while ago. When you saw it, you said it does a good job. I forget how you worded it, but you said it does a good job of her trying to find out where he is. And I thought it was, you've always said, you think it's so off-putting and weird, and once you said it, now to me, I can't unsee it. When you watch a zombie movie and everyone in the movie acts like they've never heard of zombies before, when you watch a vampire movie and they're finding people with bites in their necks and nobody says, hey, this is kind of like vampires, don't you think? It's weird because that's in a different universe than we live in. This woman in this movie very quickly is like, he's fucking invisible. I know he's here and he's invisible. So she's throwing paint, she's throwing flour on the floor, she's throwing sheets on chairs to see if she sees his form. And I feel like that's actually a really cool thing to do in a movie like that, because it further tethers that character to the audience, because the audience is going, you know, throw something at that chair or put something between you and him so he can't, you know, you'll see him coming. And I feel like when you say that in all the other, even Hollow Man, all those other movies, nobody's doing that, even though they theoretically know there's something weird going on. But I think it further relates you and that character together, you know?
Well, and it's like,
this movie does a good job with that. I'm glad that you said that you didn't feel it pushed the envelope with the invisible. And that's not to say they skimped. The stuff they did looks great, and they did a couple cool things, but they weren't trying to be like Hollow Man was like, wouldn't it be cool if he did this? And they do a great job, and it looks great. This movie was not like, wouldn't it be cool? They're like, wouldn't it be terrifying if she's in this situation and this happened? I think they pulled that off well, and I think that was a good on them. Like, it made the movie better that's the avenue they went, instead of just being like, well, with technology, we can make it look like he's over there. You know, it's like, okay, cool. They
did a great job. Again, like, she is smart. She's as smart as the audience is when they're like, you need to do this. And she's like, okay, I'm going to do that. And you're like, oh, good. And it's great because they set up in a way that no matter how smart she is, it doesn't help. Like when she finds that his cell phone's in her attic, the attic of the house she's hiding in, and she's like, I'm going to barricade myself in the attic now. That's smart, because instead of running back downstairs where you know he's waiting for you
somewhere,
she's just going to wait it out in the attic. And he draws her out and she covers him in paint. But I thought it was really smart. There's some great setups with the door opening and closing, because you just see the door open and close, and she sees it happen at one point, and you're like, oh, he didn't leave. I know he didn't leave. And like, you catch on just as soon as she did that, like, does he want me to think he's leaving, or do I think he actually left? And I think that's so smart when you have a character that is as smart as the audience is. And that's very rare. Holy shit, that's rare. But I think it really put a nice cherry on a legacy of pretty good Invisible Man movies. Like, as far as Universal movies goes, we've said how good they are. You know, did you read the book in high school or grade school?
No, I never did, but it seems like it would be a fun read. And H.G. Wells is H.G. Wells isn't always a fun read, but it's always an interesting read.
So I was looking into this. I read it in high school, and I remember it being good. I couldn't tell you the ins and outs. I remember the Universal movie is fairly, it hits the points. But the book's basically, this guy's at this inn. He's invisible. He's kind of going crazy. He starts running out of money and starts stealing from people, and then starts fighting with people. And then him and this guy who's been trying to help him become invisible become visible again. Uninvisible, become visible again.
The Invisible Man. That's like the 99-cent store version.
yeah. It's like the one made by Asylum Films.
You got to drink a pink potion that makes you invisible, and then you drink a yellow potion that makes you revisible.
So the guy trying to help him steals the books, and they're fighting over it. Anyway, the they made the movie in 1933, which is wild to think how cool that movie is for 1933. Universal made the movie. And this movie blew people's minds with the visual effects. And they are really good. And it's double exposure and guys in like black velvet suits, double exposed over film, so that when you basically double exposures, when you shoot the plate, you shoot the film, and then you put a guy in a velvet suit in front of it picking up stuff, and it basically merges them together. Anything that's black disappears in old black and white film, because when you film through it, the film doesn't pick it up. It basically just shoots right through it. So it's a very clever effect. We see some cool things. It's a good movie, but like we said, there's a scene where he derails a train and they specifically say that killed 120 people.
Killed 100 people.
And you're like, what? There's a scene.
Go ahead.
There's a scene in that movie that I love because it's the one that creeps me out the most. Is a guy who...
The sex scene.
No. There's no sex scenes in 1933 Invisible Man movie. The scene where he's got a guy in the car.
because you don't have to see it.
Oh yeah, it's invisible.
There was like no nudity.
Yeah. No, there's a scene where he's got a guy in the car and he's like, I don't remember the relationship or the exact particulars, but he's got a guy and the guy's begging him, don't kill me. And he jumps out of the car and puts a rock on the brake and pops the clutch. And the guy's tied up and he rolls down the hill and the car goes off a cliff and explodes and the guy's dead. But him begging for his life when this invisible guy's like laughing at him it's
and that's what I said. It's brutal. Like he's gleefully killing these people. And the people seem real. A lot of them, like the trained people, were not established, but to verbally confirm the death of over 100 people, and then these people are begging for their lives, and he's just killing them gleefully, selfishly, laughing. It is chilling. Really, pretty much all these movies, and the book too. A lot of people say that like the most memorable thing, and the reason I think a lot of these work is a lot of these endings you just don't see coming,
and it's pretty wild. You don't see him because he's invisible.
You didn't pick up on that.
I did.
I was so excited to say that joke. It wasn't that good? My dad's clapping. It was a good joke, Rumi. I was just excited about... Well, I feel like it's interesting because I would say... Now, I love The Creature from the Black Lagoon, the original. I love the original Dracula. I love the original Frankenstein. I would think Invisible Man is just as strong a movie and maybe even creepier a character than any of those. But I don't think he gets the same like marquee love that the other ones do, which is funny. I don't know if that's a marketability thing I don't know if it's a marketability thing in general or the fact that he's literally invisible. It's hard to have a visual established image aside from the wrapped up.
When you have a poster with like the awesome like Creature from the Black Lagoon being like Frankenstein, you have a monster with a cool design. There's zero design that goes into the Invisible Man. But the bandages are creepy. The ski goggles and the bandage are creepy. But it's like. I guess it's hard to capture that as a still visual image, right? Yeah, but the movies, like you said, the movies are all good. There's a ton of Universal movies. There's from the old school. Invisible Man, Invisible Man Returns, The Invisible Woman, The Invisible Agent, Invisible Man's Revenge, and Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man. I feel like they should have done like a very good entry would have been Where's the Invisible Man Now, right? Yeah, wouldn't that be a good one? Where's the Invisible Man Now? I did watch Invisible Man Returns. Did you catch that one? Yeah, I did. I actually just watched it last night, specifically because you said it was, of the sequels, it was one of the better ones. What did you think? Did you find some of the scenes pretty cool? I liked that it was not, story-wise, this is a guy who has been, we find out, wrongfully accused of murder. He is on death row and he escapes. Right? Well, you throw on your face like I'm talking about the wrong movie. Invisible Man Returns, the one that I have is it's the one that I saw. It's a continuation of the first Invisible Man, right? I don't remember if it's the same character or not. Didn't he die? This is the Vincent Price. Yes, sentenced to death, murder of his brother Price. Michael, crime he did not commit. Okay. Yeah. So okay. So and then the brother of the original Visible Man injects him with invisibility drug. Right. Oh, so he's trying to clear his name, but at first I don't think we necessarily know that, which is fun because in the first Invisible Man, he is a maniacal murderer who's losing his mind. In this one, he's afraid he's going to lose his mind, but we pretty quickly, like if you think about it, he doesn't do anything homicidal in this. He does some stuff, he menaces some people, but he doesn't hurt anybody. He certainly doesn't kill anybody. Then at the end, it's made apparent that another guy did, but he does put a noose around a guy's neck and make him stand on some. So it is pretty, it's not pulling punches, but it's a different character. But I like that it's not just
a continuation of the same exact story with the same exact character, do the same exact thing. I like that it was a lot different. And again, the effects are just like fucking so cool.
The effects are really cool, and they up the ante. And there's a scene where in the first movie we saw him unwrap his head, but it's kind of flat, like you don't see dimension. In this one, you see him with his head wrapped and no glasses on, and you can see the depth of the bandages. And it like reading about how they did that, it's so hard to pull that off back then. And they literally had to shoot a plate for what was behind inside his head and outside. And it's like to put those all together with the technology they had back then was pretty intense. And like you said, I love that scene where he's got the guy on the noose on the chair and somebody else is trying to help the person who's about to be hung. And the Invisible Man's in the room, basically kicking the chair out or beating the shit out of the guy trying to save the person who's about to be hung. And it's like really tense. It's a cool scene.
And there's a thing where the villain who ends up, a visible villain who ends up being revealed is standing next to the guy who's got a noose around his neck on a chair. The guy who's got the noose on his neck, it's an the Invisible Man is doing that as an intimidation. So the noose guy tells who the murderer was, which is the guy standing next to him. When the murderer hears that, he kicks the chair out. So now that guy starts to hang. The bad guy starts to run away, and the Invisible Man grabs the hanging guy's legs and tries to lift him up so that he's not choking. But you see that while the Invisible Man is invisible. So this guy is hanging, and all of a sudden his legs get picked up and try to, so that the noose turns slack. It's pretty cool. They really, and it's, not to belittle visual effects, because I happen to know a couple visual effects people, but like when you make a movie like this, they had to be like, okay, if we want to show this happening, how can we do that? And that they did tests and tests and tests, to use monofilament wires. Like there's a scene where he's unpacking a suitcase while invisible, and each item of the suitcase comes out, gets put down, comes out, gets hung up against something. And I think they did it with monofilament and wires and stuff, but like think about having 4 things in one suitcase, all with wires going straight up to the ceiling and have them cross each other without getting tangled or look like they're suspended, which means each thing probably had more than one wire. That's that's puppeteering, right? Essentially.
They do it specifically in a movie that I watched last night, which is The Invisible Agent, which is the 4th film in the franchise. They do it with a key, where a key goes into a keyhole, turns, comes out, and floats to a table, rotates midair, and sits down on the table.
It's fucking hardcore, right? And that there were guys trying that out to try it, to make that work.
And I have the Blu-ray, so I could see every single wire attached to that key. There is no less than 4 wires attached to that key. There's one straight up and one on either end and then one down below. And all of them are being pulled and pushed at the same time. And the coordination it takes to not also knock over every single thing on a table in the room, choke out the actress who's in the room with them, is a choreographed dance. And I'm sure when you saw that in a movie theater back in 1942 when Invisible Agent came out, you couldn't see those wires because of the grain in the film. It's not until it gets cleaned up and we're like, I see what they're doing there, but I'm still impressed because you pulled it the fuck off.
Right. Especially when you look at it through the lens of the last, 70, 80 years.
Yeah.
But and then you think of the film thing, I think it's a lot easier to clean stuff up digitally than it was, like we're saying, to shoot a master shot, to shoot a plate shot, to shoot composite shots and layer those pieces of film. Literally layer film pieces together to create that overall image of a man not there.
You can't believe how
it's amazing to think of, and really that type of technology that led ultimately in a way led to green screen. Green screen is just a digital version of that type of filmmaking, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about what they had then, they were really, not to knock visual effects, but they were really reinventing the wheel back then. And when you watch a movie like this, it doesn't matter if you can see the strings or if you just know that there's strings there. It's just fucking fun. And you gotta give them a high five to be like, dude, you made that fucking key turn in a lock. I fully buy that there's an Invisible Man there turning that key.
You pulled it off. There's a great shot in Invisible Man Returns that I didn't expect. All the policemen are in this mansion and they're like, hey, there's an Invisible Man here. Let's get him with a net. And we have these smokers and we can see him in the smoke. And I did not expect this movie to be able to pull off the silhouette of a man in smoke, invisible. And they do it.
He looks like a shadow, like a grainy gray man-shaped shadow that's also translucent, like he's not solid.
But they did a good job enough that
awesome.
It's like, man, you thought about this, you figured it out, and you pulled it off to the best of your ability. And I was, even though by today's standards, no, it's not good. It's a, what year did this come out? 1939, 1940.
Was it 40, right?
Yeah, 1940. Is it good? No, but for 1940, man, I'm impressed that you pulled it off to the extent that you could. I mean, they even attempted it. The fact that somebody wrote that in a script, they gave it to some effects people, and they're like, fuck, we'll try.
Let's
and they
try.
did it. Yeah.
Give me a key and some wires.
Yeah, give me some wires. Right after that, on the heels of Invisible Man Returns, I did Invisible Woman, which I watched and cannot remember a scene from it.
Cringeworthy is the word that you use to describe it to me. It's cringeworthy.
Well, it's a 1940s movie about an invisible woman, and the jokes that they are trying. It's not played. It's not played as a horror movie. It's played as a wah movie,
Yeah.
and you're like, it's supposed
they all
to be
end up at the beach at the end dancing.
It's played as a comedy, and I didn't find it funny. Cringy. Yeah, it's a lot of movies, a lot of
How about
jokes.
the invisibility? Nothing new, nothing amazing. I mean, it looked good, but nothing amazing.
This one relied more heavily on double exposure in like high contrast. So she might have been painted black, and then they film her with high contrast lights on her. So you see more of a silhouette of her throughout the invisibility moments.
Oh, she's a predator?
Yeah, basically. It wasn't terrible. I mean, it wasn't great, and they didn't do anything new. It was like invisible dresses and, wires making invisible dresses float around. But it wasn't like, whoa. The one I watched last night, since you were like, hey, I just watched Invisible Man. So I was like, I got to watch a bunch of Invisible Man movies. Invisible Agent, which I really enjoyed. Really enjoyed. I was actually pretty impressed with this movie. So this is 1942. We're in the middle of World War II. And it starts with this guy at a paper mill, or he works at a paper store where he sells ledgers and paper and stuff. And a guy comes in who's obviously supposed to be German, along with the actor, famous actor. What's his name? Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre comes in, who is a German actor. He's been in German movies, and he's supposed to be Japanese. And it took me like half the movie to be like, oh, he's supposed to be a Japanese bad guy, but he's the German actor. And it made it even more confusing when actual Japanese actors are in the movie later. And you're like, you guys know that he doesn't seem to be Japanese at all, right? And you're supposed to be selling him off. And he's still has like that German accent. Peter Lorre, he talks like this. And he just, there was no accent. They weren't trying, which I'm glad, because that would have made it cringy.
That would have been worse.
So they just give him some big, thick glasses, and that's kind of like, he's Japanese.
That was Japanese back then.
Yeah. Ugh. So it starts out them coming in, and they're like, hey, we know that your grandfather was the Invisible Man, and that you still have the formula. And he's like, no, I'm not going to give it to you. And they like grab this guy, and they put his hand in the paper slicer, and like, we're going to cut your fingers off if you don't give it to us. He beats him up. He escapes. And then he's like, I will never give away the potion or the formula. And the government's like, oh, we're sad to hear that. He's like, it'll take something monumentous for me to share that. And then suddenly it shows like a newspaper that's like Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, that's cool.
And he's like, okay, I'm willing to help you guys out, but only if I get to do it. And they're like, you're not a soldier or trained for this. And he's like, I'm game. I have a lot of gusto. And they're like, we like your gusto. Go into Germany. Go into Germany invisible and try and find out when the sneak attack's going to be. And he's like, okay. So they take him out on a plane, and they're going to have him parachute in over Germany. He's never soldiered or parachuted. Okay.
He's also, is he parachuting naked?
Yes.
Like, he's parachuting invisible,
also,
right?
I don't know if you guys, I've never parachuted. Rumi, you have, but I've rock climbed.
I had clothes on, though.
And yeah, I've rock climbed, and the harnesses are similar. There's that one that goes right between your legs and like cinches up your balls real good, right?
Well, but here's the thing. If I remember correctly, it cinches around your balls. The thing that cinches your balls is your pants, because your pants are being pulled up against you. So it actually might be pretty freeing.
Oh, if you're
everything
naked guy?
look even better. Yeah.
That's
Ruby
the thing.
Ruby, for those of you not watching, when Ruby said, oh, if you're a naked guy, he put his fists on his hips and wiggled his hips back.
The thing we haven't brought up yet, and I'm so glad that it wasn't the case, because it would have made the 2020 Invisible Man even extra creepy. At least he had a suit on.
Yeah. He was clothed.
All these other
Everyone
fucking
else
movies,
is naked.
they're naked as shit, running around with their dongs out. Everything he does in this movie, he's running around with his dong out. And like, they see him parachute in, and the Germans are like,
he keeps putting his fists on it. He's wiggling every time he says dog out.
They find his boot, they find his pants, and they're like, he can't get far without his boots. He can't get far without his pants. And I'm like, this guy is in freezing cold, like German winter. Everybody else is in full on like heavy winter coats.
You see a bunch of ding dong flopping around in Hollow Man. You see like in one or two shots, you see a real one. You see when he's dematerializing and materializing, you could see it come up.
Hollow Man.
Use Hollow Man. You see they use like infrared goggles to find him. And there's times where he's walking around naked. It's just a big old bing bong bing.
The movie that asked how much Kevin Bacon D do you want in any one movie? And, the answer varies depending on who you are. But that movie really pushed the envelope of how much Kevin Bacon D you needed in one bill, right? So Invisible Agent, he goes in and there's a lot of like funny bits where he's like eavesdropping on a conversation between a secret agent and a Nazi officer. And they're trying to get him to tell the information, but this guy keeps doing funny shit like putting forks on his seat and like tipping the table and knocking his glass over, and you're like, oh,
winning us the war.
Yeah, right. Just pissing everybody off. But I actually thought the movie was pretty good in the way it did some fun secret agent, espionage shit. There's a scene where the guy from the beginning of the movie knows there's an invisible man and he's like threatening him, and the invisible man lights the room on fire because he knows, well, neither of us want to be in a room on fire. Pretty clever. Then
how is it played? Is it played like a thriller, or is it like more fun, or is it tongue-in-cheek thriller?
The dinner scene is played like Three Stooges shit, because he's like, every time the Nazi officer goes to like take a bite, like the chickens move to a different plate, and he's like, huh, and he's trying to figure it out. It's pretty cool. There's a scene
winning
where
us the war.
Yeah, he gets that Nazi sent to prison because that guy looks like a doofus when he's like, there's an invisible guy in here, and they're like, nobody believes you.
Go to jail.
He goes to the prison and he's like, you have been such a piece of shit, and like confronts him in a way that I feel like was universal, like wanting to confront Nazis and being like, this is what you are. And it's played serious sometimes, but then for laughs other times, which is bizarre for a World War II movie. But overall, I think it was pretty good. Then there's a big spectacular scene where he's in an airplane with the spy, the lady spy who's been helping him out, and they just drop a bunch of bombs on a German airfield, and there's huge explosions, a lot of miniature explosions, which are fun. I liked it. It was cool.
I'll check it out. I have that whole set. I've only seen the couple.
This one is definitely worth checking out. I think it's one of the better later Universal movies, because they started getting goofy after this, and this one I think still
after I think it was like the seventh one was called Where the Fuck is the Invisible Man? Yeah. Nobody liked that. Like after that. And then the eighth one was going to be called Seriously Dude, We Know You're There.
Seriously. Did you fart, or was it an invisible man? It's a fun genre. So we had those, and then you said it's funny you said that you watched Hollow Man recently, because last night I finished The Invisible Man Returns. I finished it at like, I don't know, 10:30, 10:45. And while I was watching, I was like, what other good Invisible Man movies are? And I was going to try to like, not trick you, but be like, I have another one that you and I didn't say, hey, let's talk about this on the show. Yeah.
And I was like, I remember seeing Hollow Man in the theater, and I've seen it a couple times since with mixed feelings different times. And I was like, let me just see if it's streaming. And it was on Hulu. So I was like, fuck it, let me try. I only made it about halfway through.
I watched the whole thing.
Night,
yeah. I watched the whole thing last night.
I forgot. It's Paul Verhoeven. Did you remember that?
Fuck yeah, man. I love me some Paul Verhoeven. That. He's one of my favorite directors. Let me just pose this for you. I think in the 2000s, producers must have heard this a million times, because watching this movie, you're like, this seems like a lot of other movies in the 2000s, namely Deep Blue Sea. But here's the pitch. A producer sits down and he goes, yeah, all right, pitch it to me. And they go, all right, a bunch of scientists are trapped in an underground research facility. And like, sold, I love it, whatever it is. And they're like, and they're being chased by an invisible man. They're like, awesome, greenlit. Because it's like Jurassic Park did this. Deep Blue Sea did this. It's, Hollow Man did this. It's a bunch of people in a high-tech underground facility trapped, being chased by insert thing here. And that seemed to be like a theme throughout the 2000s.
I'm going to think that most of those pitch meetings happened on the same day, in the same building, on the same floor. And it was just a long hallway. And whoever pitched first, like Deep Blue Sea pitched in room 1. And then Hollow Man, the people were walking past that and heard it. And we're like, ooh, we should say that for ours too. It sounds like they're going good in there. Then they said it. Then the next movie walked by those two rooms and we're like, wait, they both have underground things, and they got picked up. So they're like, let's just add an underground sequence to our underground scientist research sequence.
Yeah. It seems to be
You're right, though. There is a bunch of them.
There's a bunch of them. It's kind of weird. Hollow Man was a spectacle of visual effects. This was, it got nominated for the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, lost to Gladiator, which in hindsight, big mistake, Academy.
I get it, but yeah, this was different because it was more subtle things, I think. Gladiator was more spectacular, and I get it. And it's not that Gladiator didn't deserve it, but this is pretty, when you watch it. So if we're just jumping right into the effects, this one, now granted, I only saw half of it last night, and a little bit this morning. There's a scene where a gorilla is invisible and slowly becomes more visible. There's a scene where Kevin Bacon turns invisible, and then later he comes back almost visible. I like the old ones better. Specifically, we glossed over this specific scene, but in Invisible Man Returns, there is a scene at the end of him slowly becoming more visible, and it's just cross dissolves of different layers. Like first it's like nerves. Then it's like nerves and muscles. Then it's nerves and muscles and skeleton. Then it's more muscles on top. And like the cross dissolve, fade in and out of that actually works for me for what my brain thinks invisibility would slowly take over. The ones in Hollow Man are great, but I think they look more like melting and unmelting. It was kind of like, to me, like it looked cool, and maybe it's even more scientific of how that would run through your veins. But to me, it looked more like, it was more like you said, the opposite of what 2020 Invisible Man was, where it was like, look what we can do. We can make his heart grow first, and then the ribs go around it. It was fucking cool, but then also you're looking at it 21 years later. It looks a little cartoony. Some
of it still holds up. Those scenes, I think, are the ones that look most video gamey. But again, to think about what you had to do for that, you needed to make animated, fully moving, every intestine moving, the heart beating, all your fucking veins moving and pulsing at the same time. That's fucking hard. Layer after layer after layer, growing and disappearing. The amount of shit you had to put together.
Like the gorilla's moving or Kevin Bacon's moving, whereas in the one that I just said from 1940, he was just laying still.
Insane amount of visual effects and CGI, and pretty groundbreaking CGI. I think at the end of the day, I will say that those are the weakest CGI looking, kind of fakey, a little too shiny. But at the end of the day, fuck, you pulled it off. I believe
and it looked good.
Working.
It wasn't terrible. It wasn't like Blade level.
Here's the thing. You did it in a way that needed to be CGI. You could not pull off what you were trying to show any other way. They did it, and the CGI was justified. And I think a lot of times when movies do something, you're like, you could have done it practical and it would have looked better.
Right.
If you had done this practically, it would have been astronomically expensive, and you could have never pulled it off in the same way. And I think that this is what justified them going this full CGI route. It looks great. They pull it off. I blame this movie for over-explaining invisibility to me and never explaining why we want invisibility.
Yeah, sure. To grab boobs, essentially.
Essentially, yeah. Seeing the monkey disappear and come back, frick, the gorilla. Sorry, primates and monkeys.
Not a monkey.
So sorry.
You know what the difference is, right? Do you know what the difference is?
Some sort of thumb thing.
It's part of that. Monkeys have tails, and monkeys can do like the monkey bars. Gorillas don't do monkey bars. Gorillas walk on their hands and their feet, and they stand on them. Monkeys can hang from shit and have a prehensile tail.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think there is hand or foot difference as well, like structurally in their bones. But like, you will never see a primate. Well, actually, but that's not true, is it? Like doing hand over hand. I guess do orangutans not really do that? But I feel like they do.
I'm not a primate monkey expert, man. I just saw him in a movie, and this gorilla turned invisible.
Didn't see them.
Yeah, saw/didn't see. You showed it to me once, and it was amazing. The second time, I don't need to see it twice. Show me the person, but it's like the movie kept kind of getting into its own cycle. And look, it looked really cool, but by that point, I had never seen it in 2000. To show it to me twice was cool. On repeat viewings now, it's like, well, I know what's going to happen. I've seen it already. And they do cool things, though. There's amazing scenes where he's covered in blood, where he's covered in water, where he jumps in the water, him walking around invisible. But this movie quickly devolves into the madness of the invisibility, and he becomes a rapist. And that's not a fun movie.
I mean, I saw it in the theater, so I saw it in 2000.
Yeah.
So 2000 was what? I was a senior in high school, and I remember being like, almost similar to how I felt about the 2020 Invisible Man. I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be like a fun killer Invisible Man movie. I didn't realize we were getting into like creepy ass rapey thing. Essentially, the first thing he does is unbutton a coworker's blouse, pull her boob out, and start squeezing it while she's sleeping.
Yeah.
Immediately, like that's the first thing we see him do as an Invisible Man.
Which, look, I'm not saying that people with invisibility wouldn't start getting creepy. I certainly think that, like, if you like did a poll on the internet of, hey, if you were invisible, what would you do?
What would the first thing you do? Yeah,
and,
obvious, girls' locker room.
Yeah, girls' locker room. And that's what one of the guys says, is he's like, oh, I totally go like fuck with people. And you're like, okay, but he becomes a rapist, and it's not comfortable especially when you're like, if you cut all this out and just got to the Deep Blue Sea portion of the program, I might be like, this movie might be more fun. But it's like these scenes that, while well done in a sense of like, you are making me creeped, it's really horrifying, and I don't like that this invisible man's doing it. I don't know if I needed to see it so many times in one movie.
Sure, I agree. And it's the same thing. It's like, and I was thinking of this the other day. You watch different types of movies for different reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like Schindler's List is a great fucking movie, and it is an amazing experience. I can't watch that every month. I can't watch that every year because of the way that it makes you feel. And there's nothing wrong with that, but horror movies in general are not supposed, in my opinion, a general horror movie shouldn't make you feel so uncomfortable that you're not having fun. You should be cheering and laughing at a horror movie at some point, for the most part. Not everyone, not every single one, but like at a certain point, I should look at you and kind of like crack a smile and be like, oh man, that just happened. You don't really feel like that in the second half of Hollow Man kind of does. But like Invisible Man 2020, you don't really like look at each other and be like, haha, that was cool, that scene. Like you don't feel like that.
Yeah, like I said, I think the Deep Blue Sea moments of Hollow Man are really fun, but the like, and I think when 2020 Invisible Man looked at Hollow Man, they're like, I see what's scary about that, but I don't think I need to go that far. And again, when a movie's making a commentary about how awful sexual assault is, which is essentially what they're like, hey, this is scary, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to see it happening to know that it's bad.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree.
And I think,
and it's like when you make a Holocaust movie, you show some of that stuff because that's the note you're trying to hit. So maybe the director is trying to hit that note with that movie. But again, I don't feel like that is the note that's normally hit in a Scream or, name a horror movie.
Do I need to see it in full CGI explored glory of like, how do we make a CGI boob get pinched?
Jiggle.
Yeah, it's like, that's kind of weird. Like you went through, like, how awkward to have to do that shot and like do the VFX for it and then go and like build CGI boobs to be CGI assaulted in a movie. That's like, to me, that's creepy. And point taken, movie, good job. But at the same time, like I'm thinking of a movie like Martyrs, some of these hardcore horror movies, and like Martyrs is a great horror movie, but not a fun horror movie. Yeah. Not something I want to recommend to people, but like
right.
It gets its point across. And I think a Holocaust movie, they can justify why they're being so graphic or gratuitous because this shit fucking happened and you need to be aware. Hollow Man isn't making the point, invisible men grope your boobs. Like, that's not the point. I don't think it needed to be in the movie. You could have gotten away with a lot of weird, fucked up shit. And he's already creepy and very aggressive towards his ex-girlfriend. Right. And I get that point. And I think that you didn't need to take it much further. And maybe Hollow Man went too far.
Could be. And I feel like the difference between Hollow Man and 2020 Invisible Man is 2020 Invisible Man almost feels like it's making a statement, making a stand, and kind of bringing awareness to like, hey, this is a fake movie about a guy who's invisible, but the shit that she's going through is real, and someone who is, you might know someone who's like that. Whereas I don't think Hollow Man was quite taking a stance. No. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, Hollow Man was like, hey, look at these cool, look at these cool VFX.
Anything about that.
Exactly. Hollow Man was just a vehicle to show invisible shit happening.
I also love the scene that I actually just watched on Hollow Man before starting this, as far as I made it, was when they make him a latex mask.
Yeah.
You've made latex mask. We've both worked in practical effects. I love when someone who doesn't know how to do that tries to make it for an audience and say like, oh, this is how we do it. We literally pour latex on a guy's face. You're like, no, that's not how latex works. That's like, none of that makes sense, except it just made this generic mask for him that looked cooler. Like, it looked cooler than if they made like a Kevin Bacon life mask that looked fake. This looked cool that it was just like this rubber looking mask of not anyone's face with giant eye holes. It was actually, that part of it was actually pretty cool and creepy.
It's funny.
I just love that they're like, here, you put this tube in your mouth and we'll just pour this shit on your head, and with our hands just smush it against your face and under your chin, and that'll just be your mask. And I was like, why wouldn't you just buy him a mask from a store? Why are you a research laboratory dealing with invisibility chemicals, but you also have latex?
So they went to a makeup effects house and like, show us how you do this. And these guys went through step by step how they did it in meticulous detail to try and get it right for the movie. And they went back to film and they're like, just dump it on him. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's
just
fine.
mix it up with a double beam sunbeam mixer and then just pour it on.
Pour it on. You want another fun tidbit? A friend of the show, Patrick Mediade, who runs the Screamwriters podcast, he owns one of those latex masks in his
like
house.
the actual prop from the movie?
The actual prop from the movie. Yeah, he owns it.
That's pretty cool.
He's a big prop collector. He has some really cool pieces, and that's one of the first ones. He's like, looky what I got. And I was like, damn, dude, that's fucking cool.
The best thing about that is probably like the crew that made that mask for the film. They didn't just fucking pour latex on Kevin Bacon's head. They probably like sculpted it and molded it and it was probably meticulously crafted to look like that. Like, that's Hollywood, right? To be like, all right, we just need some random thing that fucking genealogists would pour together on a table.
And the way it looks, like you said, somebody probably sculpted it to look like it had just been dumped on their head, but at the same time needed to be meticulous in like certain facets for story purposes of like what the lips did, what the eyes did. And like, this is something I was reading about the VFX supervisor who did this. His name's Scott E. Anderson. He's like, Kevin Bacon does not get enough credit for this movie because he was in all the scenes. He did all the invisibility scenes, even though he's not in the movie at that point. You don't see his face. Most stars would be like, get my body double to do it. Get a stuntman to do it. And yes, stuntmen and body doubles did work in that movie, but Kevin Bacon did a lot of the scenes that needed Kevin Bacon because they're like, us animating it might not have ever gotten how he walked around or how he would like aggressively walk towards somebody or grab them. He's like, that acting is more than we could ever animate with 12 animators working around the clock for a week. Like, that personal touch of Kevin Bacon painted green or painted blue or painted black was worth everything. And he committed to those scenes and brought a lot to that invisible character. Even though you couldn't see it, he brought a lot to it. And I was like, that's impressive. That takes a lot.
And that's a funny thing to think about too, because and I think I've said it numerous times here, one of my worst things about superhero movies with me is taking off the mask. Hey, I'm Spider-Man, gotta take my mask off. Hey, I'm Iron Man, gotta take my mask off. But fucking, you're like, why would you're fucking fighting Thanos, a demigod, and you're taking off your protective face gear? What the fuck are you thinking? It makes no sense. Anyway, you have a movie that's crafted around a character that's literally not visible.
Yeah.
Vincent Price's first movie is The Invisible Man Returns, where he plays a character you don't see him in. You see him in one scene at the end. It's really interesting to think of it in that regards. And that's something that I really liked watching Invisible Man 2020. Like, now Hollow Man has a lot of Kevin Bacon visible, then he turns invisible, and then once
still manages to show me his dick.
Yeah. But it does a good job of not giving him the actor excuses to show his face to get that exposure. In Invisible Man 2020, that fucker is invisible. And the couple times he becomes less visible, and I didn't realize it at the time, spoiler alert, it does become a plot point later, but you don't see his face. Even when he's visible, he's got something covering his face, which is also like a layered scary thing if you think about it. But I loved that they weren't showing me, a Tom Cruise level actor taking off that invisibility mask every 5 fucking seconds, looking in the mirror, putting it on outside of her house. No, it should be invisible. I guess that's also a reason why that movie kind of succeeds, is because we relate to her extra hard because we don't know anything about this guy. We never see him except like lumped in a bed. We don't even know what his face looks like until we finally see it towards the end of at the end of the film. So you have no frame of, like, in Hollow Man, during an invisibility scene that theoretically is supposed to be Kevin Bacon there. Your brain could be like, I can't see him, but that's Kevin Bacon. when you don't even know the actor playing the Invisible Man in 2020, I think that makes it like even creepier. And then when she finally does fuck his suit up, you don't even see a human face. It's just this amorphic kind of mannequin looking face. It's pretty cool. It's a cool idea, I thought.
It's a good design. I think they did a really good job. Well, do you want to talk about the ending of the 2020 Invisible Man?
Yeah, I think so. All right. So for you guys who haven't seen it, and I'll spoil it, this girl has been menaced the whole movie by an invisible man. Finally, there's a confrontation and they kill him. They unmask him, and it's her abusive ex's brother, who we know to be in cahoots with him. First of all, he faked his own, the abuser faked his own death and faked his own cremation somehow. Like the suit, the movie just tells us that it happened and doesn't explain it, which leads a lot of questions, but like not anything to derail the movie. My suspension of disbelief, I was like, okay, I'll just trust you that he did that. That's fine. Better than explaining how he did it, right? So the brother gets killed and he's got the invisible suit on, but she's like, that's not him. And I know it was him earlier. So now you're like, wait, are there two invisible men? But no, they find her abuser bolted inside his house in the walls somewhere, and it is made to look as though the abuser's brother chained him up, hid him in the house walls, and then now did all this invisible man bullshit himself. So the movie wants you to not know whether or not this abuser did all that, and then made it look like it was the brother so that he can keep doing his thing, whatever that might be, or if it really was the brother. Now, it's interesting. The girl, you see that she's got this plan at the end. She goes back to the abuser to their house, and he's like, I'm so happy you're here. I can't believe all that happened to you. I'm so sorry. And she goes, all right, I can forgive all of this, but I need to know that was you. You need to admit it to me. You need to be honest. And he's like, it wasn't. It was my brother. He was crazy. I would never do that to you. And she's like, listen to what I'm saying. You need to confess. I will let it go, but I need to know. And he sticks to his guns. He's like, it wasn't me. And she's like, okay. And she walks out of the room. And what happens 10 seconds later, Rooms?
So he's like, they're at a dinner table and he's like, I'm going to take a bite. And all of a sudden he can't move his hand. And you realize that there's an invisible person in the room, stabs his own throat, forced to kill himself over this invisible man. And we know that it's her. She has hidden an invisible suit in the house, and she leaves and she comes back into the room and she's like, oh my God, what happened? Did you kill yourself? And she leaves. And it's on video. You see that he had like slit his own throat with his own knife. So basically they think he committed suicide.
Cut and dry suicide.
Yeah.
By knife slitting after you talk to your wife.
I think she was just giving him a chance to be real and to admit it so that she had it on tape, but he wouldn't do it. So she killed him. I truly believe that he did all that stuff because you don't know, like if you're not the abusive person, how does he know all the buttons to press on her? How does he know every little thing?
Sure. Yeah.
And him being chained up in the basement is just him coercing his brother into more shitty acts because his brother has also been abused by him. And he
says that the brother says that two times, I think, brings it up. And
I think he basically just sent the brother to a suicide mission to try and harass her one more time so that they could like try and get her back. The whole thing is him trying to get her back to so he can keep being a piece of shit to her.
And because she's having a baby and he wants to have a baby.
Yes, exactly. And
she sets up that her having a baby would have cemented her into that relationship. She wouldn't have been able to leave him. So we realize halfway through the movie that he made her have a baby without knowing it, and she's pregnant now. Well, not had a baby, but growing a baby. So she's pregnant now.
Yeah.
And now that's why he wants her back.
And it's really messed up. And I think it also leaves you open to the interpretation of like, people, are they going to take the abuser's side on that? Like, no, he wasn't doing it to her. It was somebody else. It allows the audience to gaslight the character one more time, which is
true. And I got to say, I kind of fall into that situation because for me, there's two things that this movie does. Well, there's one thing it does and there's one thing it doesn't do. And those two things together leave me with an odd, I won't say bad, but an odd taste at the end of that movie. So she kills him, right? And she kills him without any evidence, hard evidence that it was him. Now, I, with you, agree from what I understand and the evidence that was presented in the movie. I agree that it was him doing that. That makes more sense and everything. But the fact that it's not confirmed makes her kind of like a murderer. And I'm not saying that she is not justified in doing that. A piece of shit like that should be murdered. That's fine. But she does it so cold-bloodedly like, and without the proof. I feel that me as an audience member that identifies and roots with her, if there had been one thing presented in that dinner scene at the end where he like raised his eyebrows at her and was like, no, it wasn't me. Then you're like, okay, I see that the movie is confirming to me that it was him, which makes his death more cut and dry if it's at her hands. But the next step to me is when she leaves, she runs into her friend who's a cop, and they're like, I guess he killed himself, wink, wink. Then she walks away, walks towards camera right before we cut to credits, and she smiles. The smile to me is too close to the original Invisible Man. But to me, I'm honestly not concerned. I'm honestly wondering, did they set that up as a sequel that she's going to be the new Invisible Man, whether she's good or bad? And I was like, okay, if you're doing that on purpose for world building, but without the smile, her killing him out of vengeance and self-defense and everything, okay, I get that. But not giving me proof and having her smile makes me seem like she's a little unhinged at this point.
That's why this movie's brilliant. It's giving you a chance to try and make excuses for the bad guy in the movie. It's giving the audience a moment to try and do exactly what she's accusing him of doing to them. And you're the cop in this moment, Rumi. Her policeman friend, he looks at her like, did you just murder that guy? And she's like, I don't know, maybe. It looks like suicide to me. Video. That's why she brings her cop friend to the house. She tells him that she's going to be there. And he's kind of like, oh, fuck. He's in the same boat as you are because he doesn't know the justification. He doesn't know. And he's pretty sure she just murdered him, but he's not going to say anything. And I think that that's why this movie has that like little glimmer of like really brilliant in that sense that it's giving the audience a chance to argue. And then you're like, wait, am I trying to argue for the bad guy in this moment when you know what she's been through? And you're like, wait, does that justify it? It puts you in a confusing gray area. I don't know if they should have saved that for the last beat of the film to put you in that gray area to kind of, because it's kind of a throwaway to that extent.
Yeah.
And I think that is smarter than the rest of the movie is. It's like if you had maybe introduced that more to the rest of the movie where she's like, I'm going to fucking kill this guy when you don't know if maybe he's tied up in a basement or not. I don't know if that hurts the movie or makes it better, but I think that this last scene is the smartest part about the whole movie. And that's why it's like,
do you think it was done on purpose? Then you think it was purposely written and acted and shot in such a way that it's ambiguous and is a comment on gaslighting in general? You think that was done on purpose? I do. I didn't read anything about it, so I don't know. But I
do think that's what they did on purpose. But I think it's tacked on to the like maybe they made a different ending where like she beats him in the house and they shoot him and like, oh, it's him. But then they're like, you know what, we need something else. So they put this on, and I think it's a good tack on. But if you had woven any of this into the rest of the movie, I think it would have made it smarter. The whole movie smarter, as opposed to
I agree with that.
The last button.
So yeah, because it does feel like a separate thing. Like it does feel like there's a break there.
It's an epilogue, if you will.
Yeah. That's a good way to think of it. Did you? And I don't dislike it, but it just was weird because it's so unconventional as far as like normal conventional movies. Did you catch the little smile at the end, and did that mean anything to you like it did to me? Or not that same thing per se, but did you interpret that one way or another that she smiled?
Yeah, I don't know if it means she's happy about it or she's getting away with something or if she's supposed to be something else. It is kind of a strange. It is a strange thing to have her smile. If you just had her walk away with nothing, or like, you know, think about the ending of Birdman. You look up in the sky and you're like, oh, what is that? Mm-hmm. It's like that. Like, what does that look mean? You know, there's a lot of movies that do that. Right. The end of what's that movie that had the top spinning at the very end?
Top 'em.
Inception.
Top 'em. Killer
Inception.
Tops.
No, Inception.
Spinny Tops.
Spinny Tops, the movie.
Beyblades, the movie.
Yeah, basically. And you're like, well, I don't know what it means. And I think it's supposed to make people be ambiguous about it. I don't know if that
well, like if
helps or
she had
hurts.
come to, she's walking up steps towards us.
Yep.
And the house is behind her, and she stops, she looks, I think she's looking at camera, but she gives a smile, and definitely a smile, and then it cuts to the credits. If she had turned around and you looked at her look at the house thoughtfully with no expression, that would have made me think, was she doubting? Is she proud of herself? Is she relieved? Like, okay, that seems like open to different interpretations that all make sense. The smile, like if you wanted to show she was relieved and she felt free, I feel like a sigh or like a deep breath, like, okay, I've accomplished something. But the smiles indicate happiness, right? Smiles don't indicate a weight off your chest.
She also took the suit with her.
True. And she got in and out of that suit fucking fast.
Don't think about that. Don't think about that. It's got a quick zip. It's got a zipper on it. It's like just zoop. I'm invisible.
There's a lot. I mean, I could do a whole nother hour on just the plot holes in this movie, but I suppose like you could do that on any movie, really. And it didn't detract from
all of the Invisible Man movies have issues. All of the Invisible Man movies don't know when he's fully invisible, or if he crosses in front of himself, which parts of him are still invisible, or like if he has a clothes on, what parts stay invisible. Because like some Invisible movies have shown a guy drinking coffee and you see it go down his throat.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't work. Is his poop invisible? Like that kind of stuff. Like a lot of them
that's
don't.
what we need. That's the next movie. Is the invisible poop?
Who put this turd here? I think it was brilliant. I am interested to see, again, like this movie doesn't set me up where I'm like, I want a big serial bunch of movies of these, like a sequel. Whereas like the original Universal Monster movies, I always want a sequel. I want more Frankensteins.
Sure.
I want the son of the bride of the.
This one, right?
Yeah.
You could watch. That's a movie. Like if we're just sitting there with nothing to do, I can see you being like, hey, you want to throw in the Mummy? Like like that seems like fun to do.
Yeah.
We weren't really throwing in 2020's Invisible Man. Although I swear, I'm thinking sequel because that's what it seemed like. She gave that look of like,
it could be interesting.
I'm the Invisible Man now.
One of my least favorite genres of horror films is the rape revenge movie. And while this,
like I Spit on Your Grave and stuff.
Yeah, I hate those movies. Oh my God, they're so
agreed.
They're not fun at all.
Yeah,
they're not fun at all. And I think there are these movies that are like, let me try and justify a vigilante killer. Let me try and make the audience get on board with that level of vigilantism. And, sure, I understand why they try to do that. But at the end of the day, again, do I need to see it to justify it? And I think
if you're watching a movie, you're watching it for entertainment, right? Like you've sat down and said, I want to watch 2 hours of something to take me out of real life in wherever it's going to take me.
No, I disagree with that. I think most movies are. I want to watch Hook because I want to be entertained. I want to watch RoboCop because I want to be entertained.
Sure.
I didn't watch Martyrs to be entertained. I watched Martyrs to feel something extreme. Like there are movies that I want to feel the extremes of something where you're like, I'm
sure
astounded by that. Like Saw, I don't watch Saw for fun. I watch Saw to be grossed out. And there are movies that I want to be grossed out. There are movies I want to watch a nasty horror movie to feel something extreme out of it. But I don't enjoy. That's not entertainment to me.
Yeah.
Like that's not fun. But I don't think Hollow Man was trying to be a revenge thriller. It was trying to. I don't think it was trying to justify it. But the fact that she kills him and then smiles about it makes me wonder if
Hollow Man 2020 Invisible.
If 2020 Invisible Man wasn't trying to get a little bit of that in there, where it was like, was the revenge justified? Question mark. And again, it didn't need to get muddy. It had already done enough for me to buy everything that was happened. And I don't think it did. I think it kept its hands clean in that respect. But don't get muddy with what you're justifying and what the movie is.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Hollow Man got really muddy. And I think it's like, is it a Deep Blue Sea thriller movie or is it like creepy? It didn't know what it was.
Well, again, I feel like that's also another thing that happened in the 2000s, right? Like where they were like, it was like, it wasn't exactly a blockbuster, but it was kind of like it was trying to be mass appeal, a little bit of everything.
And I think that's a Paul Verhoeven problem too. Paul Verhoeven is
true too.
One of my favorite directors, but Paul Verhoeven has a tightrope walking sort of act where he dips his toe in sleaziness. I mean, fucking Showgirls, Showgirls, this amazing, like super fun, ridiculously terrible, but awesome, like stripper epic suddenly gets this really gnarly rape scene in it. And you're like, why? This movie could have been like, I could laugh at this movie and have a great time with it, but you threw this in here and it kind of derails how fun I've had.
He likes a little bit. You know, actually, I read that Hollow Man was the first movie he submitted to the MPAA that got an R rating. Every other movie was an NC-17 the first couple times. You know what I mean? Like you think about like all the other movies, but like, and again, I don't know if it's true, but that's what I read. I read it this morning.
And he was disappointed, wasn't he?
Actually, he said he was disappointed. He felt like that was a movie he didn't need to make. After the fact, he was like, I probably shouldn't have made that. I don't know. It didn't explain why. It just said that he said that.
Because I love RoboCop, and I think RoboCop walks that line perfectly. And Starship Troopers is great. I love that. But like that's
because a guy got his dick shot to pieces before he had a chance to rape. Which I feel like I mean I don't know if that's what I won't comment on it. But that's like seems like a justified punishment. I feel like that's fair.
Yeah, shot that guy's dick off. It's weird, and I think Paul Verhoeven often dips his toes into the sleazy and kind of the shocking, and you know whether it works or not is up to the viewer.
We should do a Paul Verhoeven episode. That'd be pretty cool,
dude. He's one of my favorites, and I've seen his other ones that aren't super famous, like Blood and I don't know. He has one
Blood and Rape.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a real.
I never saw it.
It's got I don't know. We'll save it. We'll save it
when
for
we do ours. When we do the
movie,
the YouTube one of that. I want you to, and I'm saying it now. When you cut the YouTube thing for that, I want you to cut just a couple frames of him dancing in the club in RoboCop into that YouTube video. Just and maybe like 2 or 3 times, just 2 or 3 frames. See if anyone can find them. How fucking funny would that be? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I think we need to do a Paul Verhoeven episode, man. So let's do a countdown. Our favorite Invisible Man movies. What do you think?
All right.
We'll be back with the pulp culture countdown of Invisible Man. All right. You guys still with us on YouTube? Let's watch the shit show play out. Yeah.
As I tell Aaron that he's glitching right now for some reason. That's not glitching. That's just how I talk. I did that at school the other day just to fuck with people.
Yeah, that's fun.
Oh no, we did it for Shitty Movie. At Shitty Movie, someone left. They were like, and someone was glitching. Someone at Shitty Movie the other night was like, "I'll be right back." He's like, "Don't start the movie. I'll be right back." We left there. I was like, "Guys, everybody pick a pose and freeze." When he comes back, when he came back, we were all like,
"That's pretty funny."
Because I have nothing else to do.
That's pretty funny.
All right, so we've got Invisible Man 2020, the original Invisible Man Returns, Hollow Man.
Invisible
Agent. You want to just do those? I mean, those 5 seem good, right? We don't need to do.
We only do 5.
The girl. No, but I mean, like to sub any of those out for any other Invisible Man movies.
I have one more to bring up when we come back, but I have nothing to say about it because I haven't seen it.
What are you going to say about it? Okay,
you'll find out when I come back.
Okay.
So what order are we doing this in?
The first one is number 1 in my book, right?
The original H.G. Wells, the original Universal.
Yeah, I think so.
1933. Yeah,
I would say the second one would be 2020.
I agree.
Third one would be the Returns, or would you do
think
Hollow
so?
Man? Just maybe Hollow Man because it's. I guess that's true. If you're going to say top 3 Invisible Man movies, I would say Hollow Man there because then that way, if you watch Hollow Man 2020 and the original, you're getting a pretty good slathering of them. You know what I mean? For each one is hitting a different note for different reasons.
Okay. And then I'll put Invisible Agent at number 5.
Wait, what about 4?
Return.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Hollow Man 2020 Universal.
Yeah. So you do 5. So I'll do. What do I have then? What's 4 and 2? Return and 2020.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're back. We're talking countdown for Invisible Man. Rumi, we forgot to talk about a movie, an Invisible Man movie, and I'm a little ashamed because I haven't seen it, and it's a John Carpenter. I'm talking Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Have you seen
I never
this
saw it.
movie?
No.
Dude, so...
It's a comedy, right?
It's a comedy. It's a 1992. ILM did all the visual effects for it, and apparently the visual effects were like really hard to pull off. It was John Carpenter, Chevy Chase, Daryl Hannah, Sam Neill. Apparently, Chevy Chase was a nightmare to work with, which is not the first time I've heard that.
Well, they kept saying that he wasn't showing up to set, but he kept saying, "I'm here."
All right, me and your dad laughed at that one. Interesting. But I guess I need to see this movie. Guys, have you seen Memoirs of an Invisible Man? Are we missing out, or is it just okay? You guys let me know. But yeah, I'm intrigued that it's a John Carpenter, like a mainstream, big budget John Carpenter studio film, not one of his independents. So, interesting.
That's one of those movies too where you're like, oh yeah, John Carpenter did that? Like, I've never seen it, but I know what movie it is. I can see the poster in my head. I know what it is, but I would like, if I might not have gotten that right on a test. Like, who directed that, or did John Carpenter direct that? I don't know if I would have said yes.
I didn't have that epiphany until I looked it up, because I was looking up other Invisible Man movies to watch, and it's like Hollow Man 2.
Couldn't find any.
You guys skip that one. Stop it.
Well, what do we got on our list here? We got top 5, at least. I mean, we only talked about a couple today, but top 5 that we would suggest.
The order I would put them in. Yeah. At number 5, Invisible Agent. I thought, for a movie that came out in the 40s, it's pretty good. It had some solid.
And was what, the fourth in the series?
Yeah, fourth in the series.
So to still keep it fresh and interesting.
But like, imagine a Suicide Squad movie where it's one guy who's invisible and the antics he gets up to in Nazi Germany behind enemy lines. Not too bad. And again, caveat, it came out in the 40s, so it does suffer from all the issues that a 1940s film might, as far as like how it handles this sort of subject matter.
Sure.
But the whole time you're like, this naked guy's running around having a pretty good time. I'm enjoying it. I'm entertained.
You usually are, yeah.
Flopping out there in the wind.
He's doing it again with his hands on his hips.
He's just flopping it around. That was pretty fun. What's at number 4, Rumi?
Number 4, we have 1940s, The Invisible Man Returns. Like we said, for the 1940, it's got really good effects. I like that it distances itself from the original in terms of story. It's not just the same thing. You know what I mean? Even some of the Frankenstein sequels and some of the Creature from the Black Lagoon sequels are very similar. This is a lot different in the tone of what's going on. I like that. Great effects,
and
really
it kind of made the Invisible Man sort of a good guy, even though he's like...
Yes, he was. He was, which is
going
so
crazy.
Cool compared to the first one. So I like it a lot. And yeah, and you feel for him as a character, which you didn't in the first one. So kind of like how we said we like 2020 Invisible Man because it is different. It shows you a different side of that. I like this movie for that. And the effects are really good. If you guys haven't seen that one, if you like the original, it's definitely worth watching. It's fun.
It is fun. So at number 3, we have Hollow Man. This is Paul Verhoeven's 2000 Invisible Man movie with Kevin Bacon. It gets a little bit creepier than we think it needs to, but it does end up in a great, like, deep blue sea, stuck in an underground bunker, science bunker, being chased by Invisible Man, which is pretty damn cool. And
I'm excited because I'm going to finish that later today or tonight. Yeah. And like, that's the part that I'm at. It's like, I think I already got most of the rapey boob grabbing, invisible,
the creepy shit,
gross shit out of the way. Yeah. So at least I get like the fun Invisible Man killer movie now.
Yeah. And it is really fun when it finally gets to it, and the effects are out of control. Really cool.
What if you had something in your eye and you were invisible, like an eyelash in your eye? What would you fucking do?
Would you just see it floating there?
Because it's not part of your body anymore?
Well, that's a question. Yeah, like if your hair falls out, if somebody pulled an Invisible Man's hair out, like grabbed a big piece of it,
that would be a cool scene, wouldn't it? To someone grappling, and then they do that pull, and as they pull, the hair appears in their hand because it's no longer attached to the body.
There's a lot of like, I'm still like, is his poop going to be invisible if he takes a dump and throws it at you? Like,
has an Invisible Man, I don't remember if this happened in Hollow Man, but an Invisible Man is standing in front of a wall and someone shoots him. Would you see exit wound blood blast out from nowhere?
Yeah, I think so.
Does that happen in Hollow Man?
No.
That would be cool as shit, wouldn't it?
I think so. And then, like, if you cut him, well, wait, the blood's still invisible, though. Because that's the thing, it's in his blood.
Not when it hits the air. You just establish that over and over and over and over again in the first act.
Yeah, exactly. What do we have at number 2, Rumi?
Number 2, we have the new Invisible Man, 2020. We loved it. We thought it was a really fresh take on a character. It wasn't just the same shit. They made it more creepy, but not Hollow Man too much creepy. This is, again, it's not necessarily a fun horror movie, but it's definitely a good suspenseful thriller. Some really good effects, but that is not what the movie's about, and it's not trying to make it what the movie's about. it's creepy. And really, and you know, Rumi definitely knows this, and I think a lot of you guys listening do too. I love when a horror or thriller movie keeps you in suspense, when it crafts a scene in such a way that you're kind of standing, sitting at the edge of your seat and your hair is on edge. This movie's pretty good at that. So I would definitely suggest checking this out. I'm happy with this one. It was a good watch.
It was a good watch. I think it's definitely worth checking out. I definitely think it's well crafted, and I give them a lot of credit, especially for a Blumhouse, which they make fun movies, but this one I think was a next tier. Really,
I thought
well
the
done.
same thing. They're more like you watch them and forget them, and I think I saw that one. I don't remember seeing that. Yeah, but this was definitely like a more memorable.
Yeah, definitely, and highly recommended. So that brings us to number one, the Universal 1933 Invisible Man, the original Universal Invisible Man, because I think it just set it off so well, and he's such a menacing character. While still, the movie's a lot of fun. The characters, has one of the classic Universal characters, the lady who runs the inn, and she's like, she always freaks out. Yeah.
Fainting and yelling at people.
Yeah, she's fun. I love the characters in it, and the Invisible Man's scary as shit in that one. So pretty groundbreaking.
Like a plea for that movie. I think a lot of people don't, like contemporary movie watchers today, don't want to watch black and white shit, don't want to watch shit from the 30s. I don't feel that way, but I get that. If I can implore anybody listening to this who has never seen the original Invisible Man, if you like scary movies, if you like monster movies, if you like creepy movies, if you like killer movies, even if you think it's going to be rough, watch the original Invisible Man. It's not even that long. I promise you it will. I'm not going to say you're going to like it. I won't promise that. But I bet you will. I would promise that you're going to like it more than you thought. You're going to think it's better than what you anticipated. Because I thought it would probably be slow. It's like, what can Invisible Man do? But man, he's fucking people up in that movie. And it's surprising. Like I said, I think he's more terrifying than any of the other Universal monsters or creatures.
He's a bad dude too. Yeah.
It's a good movie, and it's definitely fun, and it looks great.
And it's like when you look at Dracula or Frankenstein, it's like a lot of these people can't help it. It's not in their nature. This person is consciously being a piece of shit psychopath, which is cool.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, he's a shitty human. He's not a monster. He's not misunderstood. He's fucking crashing trains.
On purpose, yeah. It's pretty great. And to bring it down, I know we've been having fun, but let me be a Paul Verhoeven here for a second. I know we joke about a lot of stuff that we talked about, but like abuse isn't funny and abuse is terrible. So like the Invisible Man as an abusive person, like we just want to say we don't condone that. And like I know we joked about a lot of stuff here today that some people might be like, that's really fucked up.
I think we were good about not joking about anything bad, but it is, and a good reason to watch the 2020 movie is to kind of watch that. And like, I don't understand abuse. I've never been abused, or I've never been an abuser, but like, I think it's a good thing the movie's a good way to like make people aware of that kind of thing.
Well, especially in this era when, like we mentioned, 2020 and 2019, we had a lot of people who finally had a voice to say like, this isn't right. And I think this movie did a great job of taking something that was real and putting a horror movie around it in a way that helped amplify and elevate what those feelings are and kind of what that message is. So I do think it's important. We definitely support people speaking out and standing up to abuse. So big. I think that movie's more important than we even know right now. But we'll see where it goes. I want to see if 2020 Invisible Man becomes sort of a neoclassic. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I would say right now it's pretty clear.
Stop it. Rumi, only one more thing to do. Blast this thing off.
Let's do it. Try to do it with an invisible hand. Like, don't look at it.
Okay.
I don't know how you do it. I was going to try to suck my hand in and just like in my sleeve and just. Yeah.
Wait.
Ruby's got his hand in his sleeve. Yeah, I'll do it too.
Invisible Man high five. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. That's awesome. We've been the Rocketeers, and we are out.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.